Today we will continue with Domain 11, Frontier Explorers. Our story is called To the Pacific and Back. We have been traveling with Lewis and Clark as captains of the Corps of Discovery, along with their translator and guide, Sacagawea. Today we will discover if they made it to the ocean and if everyone made it back home. The closer Meriwether Lewis, William Clark, Sacagawea, and their friends came to the Pacific, the more Native American people they met. This land was home to many Native American tribes who had lived there in settled communities for a long time. With the help of the Shoshones and the Nez Perce, the Corps of Discovery crossed the Rocky Mountains, which stood between them and the Pacific Ocean. A new, powerful river began in these mountains. The captains hoped to ride it downhill to the ocean, but the Nez Perce warned, in some places this river rushes through narrow rock canyons, moving so quickly and powerfully that it is difficult to control a boat there. You could be hurt if your boat hits the canyon walls or the sharp rocks sticking out of the waters. William Clark and the group's best canoeists climbed the rocks to look down at this part of the river. They heard the roar of the water charging through the narrow canyon even before they saw it. Walking atop the rock rim high above, Clark asked the canoeist, "What do you think?" "Captain," the canoeist answered, "I expect to play my violin at our next campsite downriver after we all get safely through this canyon." Clark grinned. "That's what I wanted to hear. Let's find the others." The men pushed off from the shore in the Paraguays and canoes, plunged into the rapids. The mighty current pushed and pulled the boats, but working together, the men steered around the rocks and away from the canyon walls, keeping their balance whenever the river threatened to tip over the boats. Finally, they shot out the other end of the rocky canyon and into calm water. John Shields turned to his young friend, George Shannon. "What do you think, George?" Shannon answered, "I was just starting to enjoy myself. Do you think they'll have more of those around here?" And both men laughed. Soon afterward, the men landed on an island in the middle of the river, just short of the place where the river emptied into the ocean. There, with the help of neighboring Native Americans, they survived another long, cold, rainy winter. At last, the weather cleared and they were able to travel the rest of the way to the Pacific Ocean. There before them was the sight they had dreamed of seeing, the Pacific Ocean. Some of the men cheered, and others stood in silent contentment. Sacagawea was amazed. She had never seen an ocean or even a picture of one. Clark heard that a whale had washed up on a nearby beach and took Sacagawea to see it. She told him, "I've traveled a long way with you to see the great waters, and now I've seen this monstrous whale as well. I am so happy to see the ocean." Then she walked along the sand, happily letting the waves wash over her feet. On March 23, 1806, nearly 2 years after first leaving St. Louis, the Corps of Discovery turned to head home. They had mapped a great deal of the Louisiana Territory and beyond, from the Mississippi River to the Pacific. They now knew how to get to the Pacific Ocean. They could take the Missouri River to the Rockies, cross the Rockies on foot, and then take other rivers to the Pacific Ocean. They had made friends with many Native American tribes. They found that no single river ran all the way from the Mississippi to the Pacific. They learned about many animals, birds, fish, and all kinds of insects. They had more adventures on the journey home, of course, but in the end, everyone got back safely, except for those who chose not to go back. John Colter, the man from whom the Teton Sioux had taken a horse, told Meriwether Lewis, "Captain, I've had enough of cities and crowds. I'll stay in the West if you'll let me." So Colter went to live among the Mandan people, promising, "I'll be here when you come back." And more than one of his friends did go back later to visit him. Sacagawea and her husband, Toussaint Charbonneau, with their little son that everyone called Pompey, went home to the Shoshone. Lewis and Clark told Sacagawea, "If it were not for you, we would never have succeeded." Sacagawea replied, "You showed me the great waters. We are friends. We helped each other." Setting off again, Lewis and Clark watched Sacagawea with her son in her arms, waving from the shore until a bend in the river blocked them from sight. Months later, the travelers reached home. There they said their goodbyes and went their various ways, some to more adventures and some to quieter lives. Perhaps you would like to know what happened to the four people who had been most responsible for the journey. Meriwether Lewis became governor of the entire Louisiana Territory. William Clark became the governor of Missouri, then spent much of the rest of his life working with Native American peoples on behalf of the government's newly created Bureau of Indian Affairs. Thomas Jefferson continued as president until 1809. 8 years later, though, James Monroe, the man who had arranged for Jefferson to buy the Louisiana Territory, was himself elected President of the United States. And this concludes Domain 11, Frontier Explorers.